What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this one, we have Will Australia be dragged into the Middle East conflict, a current affair? Before we dive into this video, if you guys happen to enjoy, please don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Also, please talk to me in the comment section. Do you guys think Australia will be dragged into it, or no? Because we know how tight Australia, the U.S. is, and we know thick as thieves. So let's hear what Ali's got to say, though, and dive in.
We may be watching from afar, but the aftershock of the US attack on Iran is being felt here at home. Fear has a way of spreading. What does it mean for us? Are we in danger? And will Australia be dragged into another Middle East conflict? Silence from our Prime Minister yesterday. We finally heard from him today. It was brief. And those questions, they weren't answered.
Iran cannot be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, and we support action to prevent that.
Why did it take 24 hours for Australia to express unequivocal support?
We issued a statement yesterday.
Following on from Jane's question,
Refer to previous answer.
Prime Minister PM Starmer noted that his government was given prior warning. Was ours?
The UK has been one of the countries that's been at the negotiating table with Iran for many years on its nuclear weapons program.
Was your government briefed prior to the attack?
This was unilateral action taken by the United States.
PM, you weren't briefed?
This was unilateral action taken by the...
So why is he not answering? Like, I'm gonna say that's a no. I don't think he was briefed. Yeah, but he can't say that. Why can't he say that he wasn't briefed, but they didn't get on his case? With that, if he says no, I wasn't briefed, but that then lead to a lot of other questions, maybe bigger questions that these reporters were gonna start asking. I don't know. Y'all talk to me because I would love to know why. Because I don't think he was just based off how he's answering and everything.
The United States.
Prime Minister, have you spoken to President Donald Trump since the G7 summit?
No.
It was sharp and it was short. Gus McLaughlin is a retired Major General. He spent 37 years in the Australian Army and he joins me now. Very nice to see you. It took our Prime Minister more than 24 hours to address the nation. What did you make of his brief comments?
Yeah, leadership matters in times like these, Ali, and your comments about people legitimately starting to feel fear, I think, is important. I'm a veteran of two of those previous wars in the Middle East, and I'm certainly not keen to see Australia drawn into another one. Yeah. I think the Prime Minister is a cautious leader, and I think that's not a terrible attribute to have at times like this. But I think the unequivocal statement that we don't want Iran to have the capability to deploy nuclear weapons was the answer. And I'm not sure why we couldn't have had that yesterday.
I feel like it's a time when we need reassurance from our leader that everything is okay, or he at least has a sense of what's going on.
Agreed.
He was defensive and he sounded weak, Gus.
I think the Prime Minister, as the First Minister, if you like, in Australia now is really the Defence Minister. And I mean that not to be disparaging of Mr Miles, but national security now encompasses food security, it encompasses economic security, as well as the physical security of Australians. So we do need our Prime Minister to be, to be confident to take on these topics. Yeah. Now, to be fair to the Prime Minister, that's not the sort of background that he has come from. But I think the way the world is going, he's going to see more of those kinds of press conferences.
Okay,
Yeah,
so what?
I didn't want to say weak. Like that's tough. But I would say he did sound a little defensive to me, and a little deflated, a little defensive and a little deflated. And I do agree with Ali in the sense you do want your leader to give you assurance, especially if you're feeling fear that everything's gonna be all right. You want answers, right? At the end of the day, you want your leader to give you answers. And so in this situation, I guess you don't know if Australia will be dragged into this conflict. If this conflict is gonna even escalate, you don't know what's next, and the unknown can be scary. But y'all talk to me. Let's keep it going.
What does it say about our relationship with the US at the moment? We heard the UK say, yep, we knew it was coming. It seems we didn't. But the language around it was weird. And I sort of wanted to know, like, were we? And if not, why not?
So that last question, Ali, to me is the question. We've normally sat in that top 3 or 5 alliance partners that pretty, regularly gets told these things are coming. So we were either told or I wonder why we weren't. Now, again, we do have a new defence strategic position in Australia that we're going to be Asia-Pacific experts. The Defence Strategic Review told us that. So you could argue that the Americans assumed that, this was not one that we would have an abiding interest in. So I don't know whether or not we were told, but I think it would be disappointing if we're sliding down that list of countries that were in the elite group of allies who were pretty much told everything.
So, I mean, Gus, you served in Syria, Lebanon and Iraq. You're involved in operations in Afghanistan, East Timor. You worked on secondment at the Pentagon. You're an expert in cyberspace and electronic warfare. There is no better person to ask this question. How did the US carry this off?
This is extraordinary. And I think we're reminded, people like me are reminded at times like this, there is only one superpower. And what does a superpower mean? It means you can strike anywhere in the world that you want, with this global reach. This attack was extraordinary. We saw these B-2 stealth bombers flying out of Missouri. They were not detected by Iranian radar all the way through to this incredibly well-protected nuclear facility. We saw Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from nuclear submarines, and we saw waves of stealth fighters bringing in electronic warfare attacks to suppress radars. This is a really extraordinary demonstration of what a superpower is. And of course,
That is absolutely freaking insane. I knew about the attack. I guess I didn't know the details of how the attacks were pulled off. I didn't know that they were able to get past radar detection without being seen, but with their electromagnetic attacks, is that what he said? And then destroying these nuclear facilities that they have. Wow.
this is why we've relied on this particular alliance partner for a long time.
Do you think Donald Trump did the right thing?
I do, and I say that cautiously because I haven't been a fan of some of his behaviour, particularly toward allies. I think he has weakened America's position by driving friendly countries away. But I think importantly, there was a red line in front of this president that he chose not to allow a transgressor to cross. I actually think that's important. It reintroduces the notion of deterrence, in my opinion. And for us in our region, I think there will be countries like Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, Australia that will be sighing with some relief to confirm that Mr Trump does have some hard red lines that he's going to stand fast on.
Because we've seen previously with America, haven't we? There have been red lines. Barack Obama with Syria and chemical weapons. He drew that line and what happened?
Yeah, and I think America's power, perception of power, and perhaps power is often just a perception, was eroded through those things like, the Syrian chemical weapons. And I wasn't confident about Mr Trump's reaction, but I do feel it's the right decision, and I think the way it was done and taken was decisive, and I think it is going to give some allies confidence.
What does possible retaliation look like?
That's the big question, isn't it, Ali? So face is important in this region, the perception of leaders being strong.
And with if he made the right move or not, I will say I don't know because I don't know enough about the situation. I don't know what the president knows. I'm sure whoever's in that chair, whoever's leader of this country is getting a lot more information than everybody else. And so there's a lot of information that goes into decisions that I don't know. And because of that, and because of, I feel like America's past, I don't know if we're lying. I don't know if we're ever telling the truth. I don't know if we have a certain hidden agenda. I never know. You just kind of have to just sit here and trust, and trust that it was the right move. I've heard differing reports of it being nuclear weapons, of it powering homes with nuclear energy. I don't know. Let's continue.
I think the Iranian leadership will be under pressure. They're already under pressure as a regime. They're not popular in their own country, so they will be forced to do something. My assessment is it will be largely performative, and I don't mean that in a trivial way. There will still be, I understand there are rocket attacks going into northern Israel as we speak. I expect that we'll see attacks toward US military positions, probably inside Iraq and Syria. I don't think, though, we're going to see the widespread targeting of US or other assets in the Emirates or Saudi Arabia. So I think contained for now, and partly I think the Americans again have behaved with some restraint. They've made it clear this is a one-off. It targeted a military facility.
Yeah.
I gather there was some warning, so there were probably not many people below ground. So it's been a fairly restrained attack, but they've made clear that should Iran retaliate, there's more to come.
I mean, there are now claims Iran is going to activate sleeper cells or these dormant terror cells. Do you believe that, and could that reach us?
Terror is now a kind of franchised activity, and that does concern me. So there are disenfranchised young people potentially being radicalised in the bedrooms of Western countries, US, UK and Australia as we speak. So our authorities will be on high alert. I think the organised Iranian resistance is unlikely to event for much, and I don't think we're high on their list, but I do think we need to, be alert for that radicalisation of people who are caught up in this fervour around, the Israeli response to Gaza, the broader perception of an attack on an Arab country. So, I don't mean to be trite, but I do think we need to be alert to the possibility, but not alarmed.
Yeah, 'cause I think that's the issue.
I feel like these sleeper cells and these things are just kind of stuff they're saying to scare you. Again, could be right. It could happen. I guess it's just not something that I necessarily that I necessarily live like in fear of. And military action against the U.S., I just don't think Iran could even like Iran could do anything on American soil other than if these super cells were actually real. But y'all talk to me in the comment section. So, do you guys think there will be a retaliation against the soldiers that are positioned there? I hope not. I hope those soldiers are able to make it back home to their families. And so hopefully there's not a retaliation.
There's a lot of fear out there, even with it being so far away. We talked about Iran's military sort of, being decimated, the top leaders and infrastructure taken out. Economically, though, Iran can still hurt the world, can't they?
Yeah, the Straits of Hormuz, about 20% of the liquid energy in the world come through there. And by the way, about 90% of Australia's liquid energy comes from the Middle East, goes down to Singapore, where it's refined. We don't produce any of our own. So there are some potential shocks. I think sinking a ship in the Straits of Hormuz is probably, I wouldn't say high on the list, but it is a genuine potential activity that the Iranians may take.
Does that mean that can affect, if you're sort of sitting at home going, here I am, Brizzy, whatever city it is in Australia right now, going, how does this impact me? This is where America could potentially hit you in the hip pocket.
Ali, I went and filled up my car today because I think, petrol's going to get dearer. I mean, that's, I don't want to make it a shallow thing about the cost of petrol, but this is going to be a global response. And I think Iran wants us all to feel some pain because they want to drag us into it. And I think probably the Straits of Hormuz is the only way they can do that.
OK, look, it is scary times, Gus, and we always appreciate your insight into this matter. Thank you so much.
I wish I had more pleasant things to say, Ali.
I think in my brain when I think of like war and everything, like immediately it goes to like military, Air Force, Navy. It goes to that fighting each other, right? Bombs, weapons. But I kind of forget like there's other ways to fight, right? You can cut off supplies, resources, right? So much oil is going through that strait, and they start bombing ships, and they that is how they could retaliate. Of course, that would then um, that would cause further actions to be taken if that were to happen. But yeah, when you think of that, it's like I forget sometimes. But um, hopefully this conflict doesn't turn into a war. Hopefully it doesn't escalate and nobody gets dragged into anything. But if so, do you guys think Australia would be dragged in? Australia would come in. I think Australia, yeah. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section. If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, check out the next. I'll see y'all next time.